what would you know inside of yourself? What might be a red flag that you should pay attention to?
Well, probably tiredness, lethargy, just, yuck feeling, lack of engagement, no smile, the way you move. These are all things that tell you something. Any mother will tell you the minute she looks at her kid, hang on a minute, there's something not right. And you pay attention to what mum says because you may not see it, but she can.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Missy Macholka, the Menopause Midwife. I'm here to break down all the things about menopause and hormones that seem overly complicated, which is pretty much everything. With over 10 years of experience catching babies and 2 decades of intuitive massage therapy practice, I have spent the last few years deep diving into all things menopause to figure out why so many women are suffering and why there seems to be so much confusion about hormones and menopause. Calling on my midwifery experience and my desire to help women attain and maintain full autonomy, I will stay next to you during this life transition and help to explain the options as you step into your power and find optimal health.
Hello, my lovelies. I am here today with the brilliant Dr. Charles Akle. He has devoted his life to understanding the immune system, chronic inflammation, and how these two are connected from everything to stress to cancer risk. His background in oncology, paired with his relentless curiosity about the root causes of illness, has made him a pioneer in immunology and a passionate advocate for natural root cause approaches to health. He's now the Chief Medical Officer of Immy, a daily supplement designed to strengthen immune health and help combat chronic inflammation. And today we're going to dig into the inflammation, cancer prevention, gut health, and the immune system in a way that's practical, hopeful, and actionable. Dr. Akle, welcome from Herefordshire, UK.
That's it. Thank you. A great pleasure. It's cider country, and of course, apples and apple cider vinegar and all that. But lots of trees, lots of mud, all very good for the soul, as we will discuss, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I
Thank
love
you.
how you called it the Colorado of the UK.
We don't have any hills, unfortunately, except just a mile away in the Welsh mountains. But it's the sort of nice part, a rural area of the UK. Very rural. It's lovely.
Oh, it sounds amazing. So I know we could talk for a long time about apples and countryside, but today we're here to talk about immunology, probiotics, and how they kind of intertwine. But what I really want to know first is how did you get here? How did your early work in oncology shape the way you view chronic inflammation and disease prevention? Kind of, if you can give us a little background.
I trained at Guy's Hospital in London, UK. Been a doctor over 50 years, I hate to admit. But I went into research, mainly transplantation research to start with, and I was trying to transplant pancreatic islets, which are what produce the insulin and prevent diabetes and stuff. We were very basic 50 years ago. In fact, on the gynecological front, I was going to use one of the membranes from the placenta that shield the baby called the amnion.
Mhm.
And I described the ultrastructure of the amnion and the fact that it didn't have an immune system. Certainly the human amnion didn't. And what I wanted to do was to wrap these islets in amnion so that we could then transplant them into people without inducing an immune response. Later, I worked with a very dear friend, Professor Sir Roy Khan, who started renal transplantation, even in the US, and livers and hearts and stuff. So stem cells. I've always had that interest, even though I was really a cancer surgeon. And when I came to retire from active technical surgery, I went back into immunology where I still am. And that's really the journey that I thought, well, it's very interesting that how is it that a baby is able to develop in its mother without being rejected? So I've always had that interest. I've always had that inkling that actually the immune system isn't just cut and dried. There's a lot of plasticity, modification. And then you realize that the immune system is the fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental part of life and biology. So it is defensive. if a bug tries to attack you, your immune system
Mhm.
helps you. If you cut yourself, your immune system will protect the area to stop things getting in. But it also defends and repairs. So it repairs the injury. It's very clever at putting the skin back together again, or if you have pneumonia, repairing your lungs, etc., etc. And then it's maintenance. And this is very relevant to the menopause, that the immune system is part of your maintenance program. And just like a computer, if you don't maintain your computer and you keep it clean and all the rest of it, it clogs up eventually and things don't work properly. And as we get older, our immune system does that. The menopause is part of the aging process, as you know better than I do. I always thought it was fascinating that every woman is born with all the eggs that she will ever have. At the time of birth, it comes from the yolk sac, and she's got X number of eggs. And once those eggs get depleted, then the menopause kicks in. It can be at 40 years of age, it can be at 60. Part of that is related to immune responsive. So this is, if you like, why I'm very interested in. And you can't just talk about, the immunity of I don't know, blood transfusion or kidney transplant or even cancer. The whole of your biological system is predicated on your immune system.
And I mean, I can never let that conversation go without bringing up what we're learning. And I would love to know what you know, because you probably have the most current science on this, is how much of our immune system is in our gut.
The biggest immune organ in your body is in your gut. What we've learned, and it's only very recently that we've understood this, is the fact that you've got immune cells throughout the gut, particularly the sensors that detect what's going on are in the last 18 inches, especially of the
Mhm.
gut, the small bowel, before it gets into the large bowel. And these aggregates are called Peyer's patches. They are lymph glands, if you like, but there are immune cells throughout the gut. But what we haven't really understood till just now is the relationship that those immune cells don't work on their own. You can't talk about the engine of the car as being the car. There's a whole load of stuff attached to it, and the nervous system that links into that is incredibly important and links up to the brain. So the gut brain axis, which I know a lot of your webcast viewers will know about,
Mhm.
has become so interesting. And what we've now found out, and just in the last 2 years, that the gut, when you have exposure to all the things outside and the messaging that goes on inside the gut, that is stored in the brain, in the insular cortex. But the brain can also inform the gut as to what to do. And I haven't completely worked that out in my head, because you think of the gut as nerves as digital, but they're not. They can inform naive cells in the gut with very complicated information to react against a given antigen or a given cell or whatever. It's a circular system and it's very clever. And this is important in cancer, by the way, because your gut organisms produce all sorts of effects and activity that inform your gut and have a relevance not only in cancer, but in allergies, in autoimmune disorders, the way your gut works. And the nerves are also important because that's one of the places, for example, where cancer hides. And some of the nasty cancers, pancreatic cancer, for example, hijack the nerves, which again, we've only just discovered. By the way, I've just been sent something. They've just discovered that the Amish have only a far smaller percentage of asthma and allergies than the general population because they have contact with animals, they live in a rural environment, etc. And what comes into your body from being in forests, in woods, in mud, your kids need to roll around in the mud. They need to eat a bit of mud. You need to have natural food that gets in, and that informs your gut, which informs your brain and your general health and well-being.
So is the natural leap then? I mean, this is what I've always thought, and I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it correctly, but to me, the natural leap is the more diverse your microbiome is by the amount of microbes that you have in your gut, the more resilient you are to things that come in, like
Absolutely.
asthma, allergies, cancer, and autoimmune.
Absolutely. And it's about microbial diversity rather than
Mhm.
individual microbes. So what you'll have I mean, even in the science, we see papers that this microbe XYZ, whatever it's called, is the one that does this, that, or the. It's not. It's not. Because there are so many different kinds, you soon realize as a doctor that actually it's the holistic approach that's
Mhm.
important. It's not just one thing. So you need at least 40,000 different bugs of one sort or another. Only about 3% of them come from your diet, but they're a big chunk of that diet. But that diversity is important. That's why you need to diversify your diet. Interestingly, you get a lot of your bugs from your family and the people you love and hug and kiss, whether it's your children, your partners, your close family. And in communities that share, the diversity is much better, they're healthier and happier. But it's not just microbes in terms of bacteria. We forget that there are viruses out there, that there
Mhm.
are yeasts, and there are untold numbers of things like archaea and very primitive organisms that we haven't completely understood. This led to some more brilliant people than me, Graham Rook and Professor Rook and people like that. He's put out this thing called the old friends hypothesis, which says actually you need to exposure to quite a few things that will make you stronger. Almost the opposite is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So
Mhm.
exposure to certain organisms, exposure to certain infections as a child improves your chances. I worry when I see young children who've never had a day's illness in their life. I like to see kids with runny noses and going around and sniffles and things because they're being exposed all the time
Mhm.
to external antigens which tunes their immune system. They make really terrific adults. The kid who's never had an illness in his life is usually the one that ends up getting something nasty, and it's very worrying. So then that brings us to the three components, which is exposure to previous infection, exposure to environmental organisms. We've discussed the microbiome. But one of the big factors, well, there are two. One is worms. One of the other organisms is what's called the environmental mycobacteria. And these bugs include Immy, which is
Mhm.
called Mycobacterium aurum for gold, and this is a distant relative to tuberculosis and things. So people get a bit scared about TB. It's got nothing to do with TB. The point about these environmental mycobacteria is they're a huge factor in modulating, in tuning the immune system to try and respond to these environmental factors. And
Mhm.
so rolling, and where do you find IMI and its sisters? Well, 30% of the world's mud has got some kind of aurum bacteria in it. That's why rolling around in the mud, going in the forest, walking by the sea, these are places where you get exposure. And I think it's much easier that people should take a mycobacterium in a capsule than we give them worms. That's where IMI comes in and why we have huge science for that. And I can tell you about the detail if you like in a second.
Okay, so what led you kind of from the original path of conventional medicine that you're still on and into exploring immune-based therapies and into Immy? What was the trigger for that?
Yes. So what happened was that it was observed that these mycobacteria have this incredible immune effect. And that was a side effect of some research done by Professor John Stanford and Professor John Grange in Africa looking for a vaccine for tuberculosis. Now, where I came in because of my cancer thing, my role, I really want to, before I die, I want to leave cancer with a very bloody nose. Okay. And that's my ambition in life. One woman who had a breast cancer, not big breast cancer, and they thought she's going to be dead by the time we come back next year. What's the point in vaccinating her? But they vaccinated her. And the tumor went and it shrank. They thought, hang on, something funny here. So then that was where all the work started on looking at the cancer effect and the realization that actually cancer and immunology are closely linked.
Mhm.
You may not believe this, but in 2009, when I went to try and establish, I wasn't going to do it myself. I was given £10 million, which is about at the time $15 million grant by a grateful patient who I'd operated on. He thought I'd saved him. There's a higher authority that decides these things. But anyway, he was very grateful. He said, look, I want to donate $15 million for cancer research. I said, I take this money to the chief of oncology, and I won't say where. And I say, look, here's $15 million. Oh, great. Thank you very much. He said, yeah, but there's a catch. I want you to look at the immunology of cancer. And I swear, in December 2009, this guy and three other consultants who are lung cancer specialists said, "What's immunology got to do with cancer?" 2009, that's not that long ago.
Mhm.
And I thought, I as a transplant, I've been involved in transplantation. I know there is this relationship with cancer because you can transplant a cancer, you can transplant an immune response that will destroy a cancer in the host. So that's what made me decide. And then I saw this vaccy, and we then used a sister organism called Obuensi. 10 years, we went from nothing to a phase 2 trial in pancreatic cancer. Problem was, all these other new developments came along, and we needed $250 million to do another trial. We couldn't raise the money. And then I thought, and I saw the costs, $100,000 for a course of treatment. I mean, it's crazy. Who can afford this? And I thought, do you know what? This money that we're spending and the cost of the bureaucracy and what have you, let's do it as an oral food preparation
Mhm.
because we discovered that it almost certainly works just as well, if not better, through the mouth. Why? Because instead of injecting it into the skin, which is not the biggest immune organ in the body,
Right.
but that gut is the biggest immune organ in the body. And that's where the signal goes in. And what it is that we now know this additive effect, if you like, the modulation, the
Mhm.
adjuvant, the retuning, in simple terms, of your immune system is helped by the presence of these mycobacteria in your gut. There are cells in the gut that are specifically designed to detect these mycobacterium. They detect individual mycobacterium. You only need a tiny amount, but you need it constantly, which is why we give it time and time again. It doesn't colonize the gut like lactobacilli or all of those probiotics, prebiotics,
Mhm.
whatever. You need to keep taking it. But my goodness, the effect when you need it is extraordinary. And that's really why I'm here to talk about it, because I don't want to be seeing people paying $100,000 a day for something you can get for $1 a day.
Exactly. Can we touch back for just a moment on the lack of colonization? Like, I'm just curious why that's appealing for Immy and its strain versus something like a lactobacillus that you kind of do want to have colonize the gut. Where just help me understand that a little better.
There are two things to know about lactobacilli. Lactobacilli colonize the gut and they are very useful. But the problem is there are many, many varieties, and you can get what's called attenuation. That means tolerance. You induce the
Mm,
gut sees it.
mhm,
I've seen this before. Nothing to see here. The difference with the IMI is that it's not. It has a different role. It is an immunoadjuvant, and that's why the analogy I use is the orchestra. So you've got your 40,000 different variety of microbes and your diversity, but this is the conductor. This is the one that makes them tune in and work together. That's the effect of what's called an immunoadjuvant.
okay.
And the mycobacteria are different to lactobacilli because they have the thickest cell wall in nature. They are like a tractor tire size compared to a bicycle tire, okay, with just the inner tube of the bicycle.
Okay.
It's like a tractor tire. That's why you can kill it, and it won't lose its immune scaffold, as it were, the immune reaction. And the first thing people say is, well, what is the active factor that is doing it? And the answer is there isn't one active factor. The biological systems are complex. You have lots and lots and lots of factors, right? So this skeleton is retained and you only need a tiny amount and you trigger it a tiny bit every day so that the body doesn't get used to it. And then it acts as the conductor, if you like, for this microbial orchestra in terms of tuning and then the effect on signaling to the brain. I mean, we can go into huge details exactly which cells and where bit the brain it goes to. We know all of this.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, we're still looking for microbiome diversity, but we need something like the IMI to orchestrate, to be the conductor, like you're saying, of all of those different strains and spores and whatever else
Exactly.
are in there.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for helping me understand that because
No,
that is
that's
really intriguing to me because, well, for years, I've walked people through trying to find the probiotic that is most helpful to them. And I'm always drawn to have them switch. And I think because somehow innately, I know that we don't just want to overpopulate with one, even if it's a good one. We want to
Correct.
keep that diversity. I love how this is modulating, like you said, an immunoadjuvant,
Well
right?
done.
Okay. All right. I'm
I'll
learning.
post you the PhD. Got it, because one organism, and you read a paper and it says, so and so Akkermansiensis does this and it stops you getting Alzheimer's. But it's not just that. There's a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of this is in your own hands. So you can actually look after your own microbiome. You can farm. I use the term farm,
Mhm.
FARM,
Mhm.
your microbiome and your life and well-being quite easily. And all that means is that you need to look at your diet, and that means avoiding a lot of ultra processed foods. Now, that's topical. Don't avoid all ultra processed foods, because some of the foods that we eat are processed. I mean, if you think about sauerkraut and kimchi and yogurt, and we've processed cakes, we processed all these things. So you've got
Mhm.
to be selective about what you're talking about. But generally, food that has been well prepared, there's got lots of nice bacteria in it, probably that spoils fairly quickly. I worry about milk, for example, that stays in my fridge and is still okay a month later. I mean, that when I was a kid, if you didn't drink the milk on day one, it had gone off by the next day, right? So
Yeah.
I don't like that degree of processing. I like the natural milk. I like yogurt. I mean, of course, yogurt has been around for centuries,
Mhm.
and it's very healthy, and mixed with olive oil. So olive oil with the polyphenols.
Mhm.
So you need to add olive oil. You need to add fruit, and every kind of fruit. So what I do, and I try and persuade people, is look, you go down once a week or once a fortnight to your natural, whether it's Whole Foods or your local village. Here in Hereford, we have the village shop with all the local produce, and it's seasonal produce. So we know we only get what's in season. I do get blueberries because I think blueberries are magic, and the polyphenols in blueberries. But the colored tomatoes, the stuff,
Mhm.
and I try and find 15 to 20 different things, only small amounts. So the local honey, I will have ginger, we have blueberries, we have apples, plenty of apples, pears, nuts of one sort or another, oat bran. So I put all about 20 different things and I juice them. So I have a big, pile of juice.
Mhm.
And what I then do is I aliquot them. So you only need a small cup, and you can see it like this, maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's about 100, mils, decent wine glass full. And I put them into little jugs and I freeze them. And every day I take one out and I eat it. And that means every day I've got something really good in my diet. And of course, I then watch my diet. I eat oily fish. I eat I'll eat some meat, not much meat. I cut down a lot of meat as I've got older. Fruit, vegetable, as much variety as I can. Sauerkraut, kimchi, I don't mind. All of these things that are good and healthy. That way you farm and feed your
Mhm.
microbiome. So the other thing is that people need to take some exercise. And
Mhm.
exercise is good for you. If you, in the countryside, walking around in the mud is great. If you can't in the city, get some weights and just do 5-10 minutes of weights. You don't need to become, Arnold Schwarzenegger or obsessed with the stuff. Just do enough to make you a little bit of a sweat, and you can replace what you're missing in your environment with Immy. What you're rolling instead of rolling in the mud, take a capsule of Immy, and that'll help
Yes.
a great deal. Okay,
Yes.
that will compensate. Sleep, getting a good day's sleep is important, and part of the effect of Immy, that all our people who take it say, "Look, I de-stress." And it was the reason we found that we could do it was in the cancer studies that we did with the precursor. All the patients who were on the mycobacterium coped. They were happy. They coped. I mean, we couldn't understand why this was until Professor Chris Lowry, who is professor of neuroscience at Boulder, Colorado, that's why I know
Okay.
Colorado, he's brilliant, showed in 2007 that giving these mycobacteria to animals and rats induced triggering of the serotonergic neurons in the brain. So serotonin, as you know, is the happy molecule,
Mhm.
and it's one of the molecules that does it. And he's also demonstrated reduction in inflammatory changes that due to stress. Stress produces inflammation, which is bad. So a good night's sleep, de-stressing, these are all important. And finally, who loves you? You've got to remember, particularly with people going through the menopause and things, which we haven't really discussed in detail, you must remember who loves you. And the people you interact with make such a difference to dealing with things in life. And you'll get a better night's sleep. You'll cope with things much better if you have people around you who can help you and support, and you support them. It's got to be a two-way street. So I think that's incredibly important. At the end of the day, we all have to die happy and do things, but not too soon. I think if you do all these things and you look after yourself, you'll age better and you might
Mhm.
live a lot longer. And it
Mhm.
won't feel like living longer,
Yeah.
which is a mistake.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of those things, those are the cornerstones, the sleep, the exercise. And I always say with exercise, I say get your bead of sweat every day. How are you getting your bead
That's it.
of sweat? All you need to do is get that heart pumping and get those lungs going, get one bead of
That's
sweat.
it.
And if that's all you have the time for, that's enough.
That's it.
Do it
Yeah,
every day. I can't say enough about sleep. Sleep is just protect your sleep, protect your kids'
sure.
sleep.
Yeah.
And what you put in your mouth. I mean, I love what you're saying about getting the local things, making it into what we would call here an ice cube, and I think a lot of the moms out there, if you have littles or if you've had littles recently, you might have been making your own baby food for your kiddos in ice cube trays. And I mean, why not just add in these local things like this to
There you
just
go.
increase that microbiome for yourself and for your littles? So those are amazing, amazing, and who you love. I mean, and who loves
Yeah.
you. I love how you framed that. That is really wonderful because it is just it's the people around us. It's our community and it's so, so important. But I think if we don't feel well, we can't nurture our community around us. So we're not as lovable if we're not feeling good. And I don't
Yeah.
think we can give as much love if we're not feeling good. So if we can help modulate that system so that we can be more lovable and more loving, I think that's a better scene all the way around.
It's not always your fault, you see. I mean, if you get I mean, COVID taught us this.
Mhm,
Once upon a
mhm,
time, if you went to the doctor and said, "Look, I'm feeling lousy," they would diagnose you with some wishy-washy thing like fibromyalgia or whatever. There are people out there, a lot of people with fibromyalgia suffering because they go to the doctor, all the tests are normal. Doctor says, "Look, yeah, just get a grip. I mean, man up for God's sake. What do you mean?"
mhm,
They've had no sympathy because the doctor sees all the tests that are done and they're normal. Of course, not doing the right tests. If you test their immune system properly, you'll find that a lot of these have had what's called a post-viral attack.
mm,
So whether you call it post-viral syndrome, myalgic encephalopathy, yuppie disease, but it took COVID, post-COVID illness, has taught us that a nasty viral infection can leave a chronic inflammatory process in place, which makes you feel lousy. So I mean, we all know if you have a nasty cold or flu, you feel like, blech. I mean,
mhm,
that's the only way to describe it. And
mhm.
you want to go and lie down. And actually, that's a measure of the inflammatory, the bad inflammatory influence of these things. So one of the things about Immy and these mycobacteria is that it strengthens your immune system. And the idea is that if you do get a viral infection, which I mean, I get the odd viral, but it's never as bad as the people around me. And we learned this also, by the way, from our cancer patients, because you'd say to them, well, how was how did you get on in December and January with all these colds that are going around? Say, look, I was fine. Said the whole family came down, they were sick and they were in bed and fevers and what. I was fine, and they're the ones with the cancer, right? And we thought, hang on a minute, something funny going on here.
Yeah.
So we're missing. So one of the things is that we think that by tuning your immune system, if you feel lousy, you're not going to be much fun to be around. But if at least you perk up and you know what the problem is, you can cope with it.
Every morning starts with my coffee, or as my family calls it, my secret sludge. It's my way of stacking the odds in my favor before the day even begins. One of the key ingredients, perfect amino powder by Body Health. It has 8 essential amino acids in the exact ratio your body needs to repair muscle, support healthy hormones, speed up recovery, and keep your energy steady. Here's the kicker. It's 99% absorbable in about 30 minutes, so your body can actually use the protein in it. It uses the amino acids to create protein. So for me, that means I'm supporting my muscles, joints, metabolism, and even mental clarity all before I have breakfast. Here's a pro tip. Add it to your coffee with your MCT oil and blend for super yummy coffee. I will tell you, perfect aminos or aminos of any sort do have a strong taste, but I'm going to tell you, Perfect Aminos has done a really great job of making them taste great. So it might take a tiny bit of getting used to, but they are amazing. So find the mix that works for you. You can grab these from me at ohm406.com right on my website. Just search Perfect Aminos, and then you can choose whatever flavor and size you want. Also, want to say, this is not a sponsored ad. I just do ads for the things that I love, and I hope that you appreciate them too. Have a beautiful day and be well. This is maybe a nice segue into the connection between chronic inflammation and cancer risk. Can we kind of unpack that a little bit?
It became very obvious to me and a lot of other people that actually the interrelationship between chronic inflammation and cancer is very real. Now, we knew this, for example, from situations where you had chronic inflammation. So, if you had a chronically inflamed skin on your leg, it
Mhm.
will eventually turn into a cancer. We know that chronic skin damage from ultraviolet radiation leads to skin cancer, and including nasty one, malignant melanoma, which is
Mhm.
horrible. But you can get cancer from that. You can get cancer from having chronic lung infection that will turn into lung cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So we know that there is a big link between chronic inflammation and the development of cancer. What we didn't understand was that the chronic inflammation is actually involved in the process of the cancer. So the cancer is really smart. Most oncologists thought of cancer as really dumb. And what they would do is they just try and kill it
Mhm.
and hope that they kill the cancer just before they kill the patient, right? They'd
Right.
give you these awful poisons and things, which I never understood. I mean, I was a surgeon and I'd cut it out and occasionally we'd get success and they'd give people chemotherapy. And in some situations, chemotherapy is brilliant. Some of the leukemias, the Hodgkin's disease, testicular tumors, there are some very huge successes where they've recognized how to handle it. But generally, I mean, if you've got pancreatic cancer, frankly, the treatment's worse than the disease using raw chemotherapy. Immunotherapy is a different story, and it's taken a while to teach our colleagues, my colleagues, that you've got to have a different mindset as to how you use immunotherapy. And the results are astounding, and the relationship with the gut are very important, as I'll explain in a second. But it's all, the thing about chronic inflammation is that the cancer is smart. It wants to survive. It knows that the only way it's going to survive because your own cells will recognize the cancer and try and kill it. You go through three phases. Normally, we all produce cancer cells every day, maybe 100,000 cells, let's say 100,000 cells a day, and you eliminate those cancer cells because your immune system's good. As you get older or if things change, you get what's called equilibrium. And so the cancer's trying to grow, you're trying to kill it, and it's beginning to learn, it's getting smart. It's beginning to find ways of hiding and getting away. I told you one of the ways
Mhm.
pancreatic cancer is it hides inside the nerves, a bit like some of the viruses,
Mhm.
cold sores and things which hide and creep out every so often. And then you get the cancer escapes control. And what that happens is it then starts to secrete cytokines, which are signals, chemical signals that shut down your immune system. And what happens is the cancer is surrounded by these immune cells. And you think, what are they doing there? The answer is they're doing nothing because they've been told by the cancer, by the signal, hey guys, nothing to see here. Carry on your way, and you go to sleep. And then the cancer grows and grows and grows and grows and spreads. And so this chronic inflammatory milieu, this environment that the cancer induces is designed to shut down the immune system. The immune system just goes into a sort of neutral thing and says, okay, fine, nothing to see here. And the
Mhm.
cancer wins. You need to fight that. And this is where these checkpoint inhibitors and the new immunotherapies come in. And here's where the gut comes in. So in melanoma, because we know a lot more about the immunology of that, 50% cure. today. If you got malignant melanoma, even stage 4, you could think of almost a 50% cure at over 5 years. That's amazing.
Wow.
I mean, it would be 5% when I was a kid. But 50% don't get cured.
Hmm.
Why? So, what some clever people did in Philadelphia, and this has been published in major journals, they did a stool transplant. They took bacteria from people who responded and they put them into the non responders. A third of them responded. Another group took stool from healthy people and put it into the non responders, and 50% of them responded. Now, that gives you a little clue as to how important your microbiome is in terms of informing your immune system to switch off that chronic inflammatory process and say, hey, hang on a minute. Look, there's a bad guy there. We can see him. We know what he looks like, right? And then it attacks. So
Yeah.
that's the link.
Yeah. Oh, FMT, so fecal microbiome transplant, is something that my listeners should be aware of because I did a whole podcast on it because I found it fascinating. When I learned about it in midwifery in the early 90s, and I was like, what is this? This is so cool. And now there is one oral option in the United States that is it's a killed option. They're doing a lot of studies on it right now.
As you know, as a midwife, when you're midwife, part of the going through the birth canal, the Almighty designed the fun area and the sewage area to be next to each other for a very good reason. Let's leave it at that, okay? But when the baby's born, it always gets contaminated by fecal matter by the mother, right? Which is natural and normal and correct. In France, if you had a cesarean section where the baby didn't go through the birth
Mhm.
canal, the midwife would take a bit of poo from the mother and smear it onto her tummy and put the baby onto it. In
Right.
fact, more recently, they got into a bit of trouble. They took a little bit of feces, put it into the milk, and gave it to the baby, which is pushing it a little bit, right? But the principle is correct. Fecal transplant is a little bit like a sledgehammer to a pin, but that's the best we got at the moment until we understand it better. So I'm a great believer in fecal transplantation. I think every patient with cancer ought to have a fecal transplant. But
Agreed. I wish it was more accessible for people. It just isn't that accessible. And so I'm really glad that there is a way to even try
sure,
even a
sure.
smaller version of it. The product that I'm aware of is Thana Biotic, and I do like to give them a shout out because I think they're
Sure.
really pioneering in that
Step
world.
in the right direction. Yeah.
And I would love to actually have you and their founder, Dr. Macbeth, on a podcast together because I think it would be so much fun to talk about both of your points
Very happy.
and have your expertise because you both go so far into the deep that I get lost, but I'm so intrigued
I'm
with
sorry.
all the knowledge. I love it. So let's see. I'm going to bring us back just a little bit. Can we look at a little bit about how people might recognize early red flags that their body is struggling with inflammation? Like as a massage therapist, I put my hands on someone and I can feel inflammation
There you go.
on their
Yeah.
body. I can feel it in one area, or I can feel if their whole body is inflamed. But a lot of people don't go, "Oh, I'm inflamed." They won't realize it. And I think that's the way a lot of people are. We just kind of push on through and we push on through and we're not tuned in enough to know that we're inflamed in an area. Where do people start with knowing that?
If you just look at the ordinary blood tests, they're pretty useless. You need to do dynamic tests, a bit like your massage. You can't just look at somebody. You've got to
Mhm.
feel and make them work. So you've got to push the muscle. So you'll feel inflammation because the muscle or particular area feels hot. You'll get heat. You'll get stiffness, don't you? You
Mhm.
get that kind of stiffness, and you know something's not right there. You got baggy eyes. You haven't slept properly. You're not moving properly. Your mood. You're lethargic. These are all signs that something is wrong,
Mhm.
right? And so it's very important that you have people who love you and know what you look like normally so that you can have a comparison. Now, they can come to you because you're an expert and you can feel and touch and you can sense it. I mean, as a doctor, I would often, the most important thing to me was watching the patient walk in through the door. And I
Yep.
always made sure there was a long distance so they would walk. And I could see from the way they walk, from the way they, and then
Mhm.
shake them by the hand. If you actually hold somebody's hand, the amount of information you can get just by holding somebody's hand is fantastic.
Mhm.
And you look at their face and their demeanor and all the rest of it. So those are all factors that very difficult to isolate. I mean, one wonders if you had an AI program that looked at your face and may be able to tell you all these things. I think we wouldn't be far from there. I bet you we could do it. But feeling and touching is just something else. So that's part of the deal.
So with that, like, red flags might be what to you? If you're like, what would you know inside of yourself? What might be a red flag that you should pay attention to?
Well, probably tiredness, lethargy, just, yuck feeling, lack of engagement, no smile, the way you move. These are all things that tell you something. Any mother will tell you the minute she looks at her kid, hang on a minute, there's something not right. And you pay attention to what mum says because you may not see it, but she can.
Mhm.
It's interesting. You may see, hang on, I'll show you. I wear an Oura ring, more out of curiosity than anything. And about a year ago, I was on a flight from New York to London, and everybody was coughing and spluttering and carrying on. And I made sure I took my Immy, and I got a bit of a temperature, and I didn't feel right for a couple of days. I have to say, my colleague was in bed for 3 weeks. He couldn't get out of bed for 3 weeks. I was out for a couple of days, and my Oura ring told me you're not right, and it was to do with the way the pulse was, my lack of sleep,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. And so we're heading towards a kind of technology, if you like, and I say even maybe facial recognition type of
Mhm.
technology that will tell you that, hang on, you're not well, you're not right, there's something wrong. And these are the red flags, if you like.
No, I agree, and I think that just listening to ourselves and our bodies is really, really important, and I think that while I love things like the Aura Ring and the Whoop strap and the other wearables, I also think that it's so important that we remember that we know ourselves and we remember what's inside because we do have this, like you said, what you learn from a handshake is there's so much information, and that has been built over millennia for us
Yeah.
to know our fellow humans, to know ourselves. I think that inner wisdom is really important, and I love it mixed with modern things. I just hope that we don't lose that intuition,
No.
that intuitive piece, which I know
Yeah.
is not hard science, but I think that it informs science a lot of the time, and I think it's
Sure.
really important. So I love that you kind of brought the 2 together.
If you look at our website, the immy.co, you'll see comments made, and people will say, "My goodness, look at this, the effect it's had on me," and the effect, and that's because most people, particularly with these kind of conditions, have been struggling. And one of
Mhm,
the biggest struggles they have, particularly with fibromyalgia, is that nobody believes them. They go to the doctor and they don't get any empathy, sympathy, whatever you want to call it, and they feel, hang on, maybe it's me, but they know their own body and they know when
mhm.
it gets better. So you're absolutely right. But the Immy helps. I tell you, Immy has been a revelation to me. It's not the only thing. You can't, it would be like you gotta buy a ticket in the lottery of life, as I keep saying. But you take your Immy because that's an important compensator for the lack of exposure to your environment. But you got to work on your diet. You got to work on exercise. You got to work on a
Mhm,
whole bunch of stuff, sleep, and you got to avoid a lot of the hype. One of the other things that bothers me is we've got all this science and all this data, and I look out there and I see people being offered all sorts of supplements and things, and the huge majority worry me sick. There's a huge number of them that are not manufactured properly. In the manufacturing process, there's heavy metals, there's
mhm,
fecal material. Some of the cannabinoid agents have
mm,
fecal material in them. For goodness sake, I mean, okay, we want a fecal transplant, but I'd like to know where it's coming from, right?
right.
Reputable things like vitamin D, which, coming back to the menopause, I think you should be on vitamin D for your menopause. You should be on the omega-3 supplements, or oil of evening primrose, if it comes from a reputable thing, is a reputable manufacturer, is very good. Vitamin C, vitamin B, but most of this stuff you can get from a sensible diet. So if you work on your diet and you work on sourcing it, there are very, very few
Mhm,
supplements that you need. But vitamin D, well, Amy, obviously, vitamin D, probably vitamin E. Again, be careful because if you take too much vitamin E, there's an association with prostate cancer, which is not a problem for the menopause necessarily, but
Right.
it makes you think about other things. So a lot of it is in your own hands. A bit of exercise, that's not something you're going to have in a pill, right?
There is no magic pill. We know
No,
this.
no single magic pill, but there's Immy.
Mm.
I think I have to say, of all the supplements, I think you asked somewhere if you had to go on a desert island, what would I take? I
We
just
can do
make
that
sure
right now. We can do that part right now. You bet. Let's tell me what's your top
well,
5?
well, I don't know about the top. Well, three, I suppose. I would want access to a library of some sort because of
Mhm.
that. I would take Immy because I think that's just it's a no-brainer. And I would take a fishing rod because if I was on an island somewhere, I could at least catch fish and eat and stuff and things like that. So it'd be a start, and hopefully there would be coconut palms and things because the coconuts are wonderful, aren't they, as
Good
a
chat.
source of everything.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three things I would probably want to have. But the IMI has been a fantastic from my own personal point of view. I take it myself. I'm 73 years old, so I'm still reasonably fit, I think. If I can use it to break the back on cancer, I'm really still my main emphasis, even though we're doing this talk, is on the cancer research. We have some really exciting data, as I mentioned to you with the MD Anderson stuff with the
Mhm.
transcriptome work. We know we can retune the immune cells and get them to attack the cancers and things. I need to do that experiment, and we were very close until the funding was withdrawn. So I've got to start that all over again. But we know from previous work on the mycolocibacteria that we have a very powerful anti-cancer effect. But on mood, on well-being, on general immunity, on reducing the effect of viruses, it's pretty good. And it's part of the armamentarium.
That's incredible. I always like to share what I would take on my desert island too. And I get every time I do a show, I get to bring 3 more things because
All
it's a
right,
big
yeah,
show.
you're the boss.
So my bag keeps getting bigger and bigger. But I would go nowhere without my estradiol, my
Yeah, no, we don't.
progesterone,
Yeah,
and my
yeah,
DHEA. So
yeah,
those are I consider that kind of my holy trinity because my
yeah,
body falls apart without them and my brain.
yeah.
Um, and then, I'm kind of obsessed with methylene blue right now. Actually, I have
Oh,
been for
okay.
some years. And the one that I use, I'm going to do a little shout out to Larry Pham. He's at Longevity Larry, and he manufactures it. And so I know the direct source, and his is phenomenal. And it has silver nanoparticles in it, just a teensy,
Hmm,
teensy bit, and I have not gotten sick since I've taken it consistently, and I'm fascinated with it. But I'm really excited to add Emmy in. You guys sent me
definitely.
a sample. Here's what the bag looks like.
Yeah.
I love that it's low waste. I think that's really awesome. And there are these great little pills. So they're just they look like an oil cap.
They're soft. They are.
Yeah,
They're
they're
olive oil,
squishy.
extra virgin, and they're soft. They're very easy to swallow. They're not hard. Manufacturing them is quite difficult, but they're
I bet.
ideal
I bet.
and they're easy to swallow.
Can you chew them?
You can, but there's no need. It'll
Okay.
dissolve in your stomach. I mean, we
Okay.
did start off with a dropper bottle, but this is an easy way of carrying them around.
Oh, definitely.
Um, yeah, but if you could chew them, or you can cut one end off and squeeze it out.
Okay.
I mean, it's a very good anti-inflammatory. I mean, if you've got a bit of acne or stuff, it's amazing what a bit of the oil will do.
Oh, right on
We have
on the area.
well, give it a go, see what happens. We're
Okay.
testing it and seeing what
I have
happens. But
teenagers, so there's a
well,
little
there you
bit of
go.
that in my house, and so I might
Well,
recommend it.
and let me know how you get on.
Let's talk about something no one warned us about: vaginal dryness. It's common, it's uncomfortable, and honestly, it can make you feel like not yourself. That's why I love Julva Pro. It's clean, it's a DHEA product that supports healthy, resilient vaginal tissues. It was developed by obstetrician gynecologist Dr. Anna Kabeka. She is also a hormone champion for women. It's backed by real science, not just hype.
I've seen firsthand how much it can help with dryness, irritation, and even intimacy. And yes, I use this product myself. This is not a sponsored ad. This is just something that I want you to know about because it works. If you've been feeling off down there, this might be your missing link. Give it a try. You can grab it directly from me at ohm406.com. You cannot buy it on Amazon. You have to buy it from a hormone professional like myself. So even if you don't get it from me, please get it somewhere. I do have it on my website. I always have it in stock. It's ohm406.com. Trust me, your vulva will thank you. Let's just do kind of a brief overview about how the gut immune connection shifts for women during perimenopause and menopause, because that's, I think a lot of women experience that, but they don't know what's going on.
I think the first thing to understand is with the menopause is it's a natural process, and as you know, it varies in different ladies, and it's to do with how when your eggs pack up, and every baby girl is born with the full complement of of ova of eggs. Because that forms from the yolk sac, but you have all the eggs that you're ever going to have when you're a baby as a girl, and then as you grow up and you go through the menarche, you puberty, etc., you then start using the eggs, and eventually they wear out, either because they get old and they stop working, or something attacks them, or somebody removes it. And there's maybe a genetic factor, there may be an environmental factor, but eventually they stop working. And it's all linked with your immune system.
Mhm.
Now, of course, because the microbiome is so important, it's inevitable that somewhere in there it's involved. We know that the hormonal changes that occur affect your whole body, including the gut. But the gut also contributes to those hormones. So we know, for example, that I mean, we phytoestrogens, which most people know about in food and stuff, but they also the bacteria can produce estrogens. They can also produce blocking agents, anti-estrogens in the
Mm.
gut, which is interesting. So I don't know enough about that, and I'm not sure anybody does, but the work is happening on that to see which is more favorable and which isn't. So the switch that switches them all off eventually is either running out of eggs or
Mhm.
something switches it off, and that's immunity. And so anything that maintains quality in your immunity has got to be helpful. It's got to be a good thing. And the effects on your body can be mitigated or attenuated by maintaining a good immune system. So it's like a viral infection, you feel lousy, but if actually your immune system is good, it fixes things and it keeps things under better control, right?
Mhm.
Won't necessarily stop the hot flushes or whatever, but I think people need to understand this is a natural process. I think people need to understand you're not alone, right? You don't need to sit there and suffer in silence as used to be, well, not man up, but woman up, so what? 'Cause, you've got friends out there like you who will help you on your way. And
Mhm.
there's nothing like a problem shared to reduce the problem. Just the fact that somebody's interested in talking about it is enough to improve the situation. So we go back to we know the causation, we know about diet, we know about all these things like having good sleep, reducing stress. Stress is a huge factor, and it can be self-perpetuating because if you're suffering from your menopausal symptoms, you get stressed, you get more stress, you get more suffer. You've got to deal with that. And again, processes that help, and I would hope that something like Immy will help with the stress responses and help to reduce it. But at the end of the day, you should, the diet, all these things, exercise. These are routines that you should do, but you shouldn't be frightened of seeking help and seeking support. And if you need to have hormone replacement therapy, generally, I think that the jury had been out for many years in the past. We were always worried about HRT in terms of development of malignancy and stuff. I think generally it's pretty safe, and in the dosages that are used nowadays and the way it's used. If you don't want to go to full HRT, estrogen cream and stuff like that, vaginal cream is important, and you need to look after your partner as your partner looks after you. So the sexual element is something that is often not discussed, is it? People feel guilty because they have dryness, they have issues, they get more risk of infection because of all these things. but there are solutions to that,
Yes,
very
there
easy
are.
solutions. And so why not? But people sometimes are embarrassed to talk about it. So why not talk about it? Get help. And something as simple as an estrogen cream, some lubrication, etc., etc. A little bit of advice on how to go about things, I think makes a huge difference to de-stress, particularly a relationship. Remember that you and your partner are a unit, and you can't just sort of leave it out. So I think that's what I've always found, that generally most of the stress comes from that relationship with the partner as much as anything else, and that feeling of loneliness that you're alone, and
Mhm.
and that's not nice. So you're not alone. Don't let yourself be alone, and work, and I think that will help. So inflammation, you can create it and you can suffer from it. So you get into this vicious cycle, and by killing it, by helping you sleep, exercise, etc., and things like Immy, I think will be a great help. The omega-3 supplements are very good. Vitamin B, I think, is good. Vitamin E, yeah, in theory, but not too much of it. And by the way, one of it does you good. 10 doesn't necessarily make you 10 times better, right? So just take it easy.
Yeah.
Be patient, because it will pass, it will get better, and that's fine. It's a normal process.
But the truth of the matter is we're always in menopause. Like once we're postmenopausal, we're there until the day we die. So I would push back against being patient. I say don't be patient. I say
No,
get out there,
uh,
make a phone call, call me, call
oh yeah,
someone, and get
absolutely,
their help for
yeah,
all of the things. Because what I understand, and I could be totally wrong about this because I don't even remember where I heard this, but the information made sense in my head that as women go into menopause, we have our microbiome shift to be
hmm
that of much more similar to a man. And so we're struggling also with our microbiota, like just shifting and changing and maybe becoming a little less diverse because of our estrogen drop. I don't know if there's any connection there, but my brain kind of goes that way. But I know that a lot of women end up with a lot of dysbiosis in their tummies. They have
sure.
so much bloating, they have the weight gain, they have all the things that just come on all of a sudden. That's why I'm really excited to think about adding Immy in. I work with HRT, but bioidentical hormone replacement therapy with my
Mm.
people. I'm really excited about seeing what Immy is going to do for some. I have a few clients in mind. You might know who you are. And I want to see how that works for them, which kind of leads me to how quickly are you guys seeing like a reduction in inflammation for people that they can feel themselves? Do you have any data on that?
I mean, people are different, but generally it takes somewhere between 10 days and 3, 4 weeks
Okay.
before we see an effect. So, that's the sort of timeline.
Mhm.
The counter to that is that if you're generally in good condition, you're fine. You won't notice anything, right? Because you're in
Mhm.
good condition, you're
Right.
fine. What's the problem, right? So
Right.
if you're well and everything's good, you notice nothing. You say, well, I'm not, why am I taking this? And the other mistake is they stop taking it afterwards. So generally, people will notice a difference within 3 to 4 weeks,
Okay.
and then you got to keep taking it for the reasons we've discussed, and that sort of reduces the process. But it does, but the stuff's still got to have something to work on.
Mhm.
A fire still needs wood or fuel or whatever. So you need to work on your on your farm. You've got to farm your microbiome, as we've discussed.
Right.
You've got to make sure that you have the diversity that's required, and the foods that help you. Now, some foods may upset you,
Mhm.
um, which and the bloating and things can come from that, and variations on what we would call irritable bowel syndrome. But you may have to modify and look at foods that maybe are very high in lactose, or you reduce the amount of gluten which
Mhm.
is in there. Maybe you're getting some sensitivity there, and that exists. You don't need to have full blown celiac disease, right? You can have
Right.
gluten sensitivity, and so by reducing things like that and increasing the things that you enjoy. So it's very important that you farm your microbiome, and you got to. We're all individual. There's no two the
Mhm.
same, and you need to see what. And fiber, by the way. is really important. And so if you want to reduce the gluten and the fiber and things, you can switch to oat bran or stuff like that. I mean, that's why I love porridge. That's what I get. And I get most of my fiber from that. Most Americans are down at 6 and 7 grams per day on fiber, which is rubbish when you think the minimal recommended dose is 20. And you probably ought to be around 40 or 50 grams of fiber, because fiber is the food that feeds your microbiome. I mean, the bugs need something to eat, and that's why the fiber is there, right? And it tends to help the good bacteria rather than the naughty ones.
Right.
So I think fiber, being a little bit selective with your food, watch out for lactose. But when I say about being patient, I don't mean being sitting there waiting for nothing to happen. No, get out there and hassle, right? I mean, you're quite right. Go and see the guy. Say, look, I'm having problems. Help me. But things take time to
They
work, and then eventually the thing settles down. That there will be there is an end to all of that. And you got to look after your bones, you got to look after your diet, you got to look after your well-being, your sexual side, which is just important. All these other things, the quality of your skin, everything, all these are really important. And you have to put, you got to make an effort. You've got to buy a ticket, right?
Yes. You do have to buy the ticket. It doesn't just happen
Yeah.
for you. Can you help me understand how to say the actual strain that is Immy is made of?
Sure. Mycolysibacterium aurum Aogashima. And Mycolysibacteria is now, they've been reclassified, because when you used to say mycobacteria, I mean, the first time I told them in the hospital I was bringing on mycobacterium, they completely freaked out.
Mm.
Oh my God, it's going to kill people. They were thinking about tuberculosis and leprosy. It's like, no, no, no. It's like, having a Rottweiler compared with a Chihuahua or whatever. It's just not the same animal.
Right.
It's a Mycolysibacteria aurum. Aurum is gold because that's the color it is when it's cultured. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful color. And Aogashima because it comes from the island of Aogashima.
Well,
Yeah.
are you ready for a little rapid fire fun? I can just
Oh
ask
my goodness.
quick questions and we're gonna just keep it really short and fun. So coffee, friend or foe?
Oh, friend. Oh, I like my
Agreed.
coffee and it helps. Yeah. Huh?
Okay.
You don't
What
agree?
Oh, I do agree.
Oh,
I
good.
do
Oh,
agree.
yeah. No,
And
but
I
it's
know
proper coffee. Proper
proper
coffee,
coffee,
not yeah, yeah,
clean,
yeah.
really nice clean coffee. And if you've gotta do decaf like I do, because I tend to be really sensitive to caffeine, I use Purity Coffee. I love their
Yeah,
decaf. It's super
yeah,
clean.
yeah, yeah,
I am and you actually have to be more careful even with decaf because something about it is dirtier, quote unquote, if you get an
yeah,
organic, and so I'm super careful about that
yeah.
because it does hurt my tummy if I don't get the right kind, and so I think that
Yes, exactly. It's a stimulant, and
Mhm.
it can, yeah. And the other stuff in the coffee, it's not just the caffeine; it's the theobromine and xanthines in the
Mhm.
coffee, which have an effect on gut motility and stuff. But no, coffee is great. I'm sure my bacteria, love coffee in the morning. They say yum yum, and please send more.
Yes. Yes, please send more. Okay, what is one food that often makes your gut happy and one that often doesn't?
Yeah, the one that does. I tell you, my favorite food at lunchtime is strained yogurt.
Okay,
So there's a kind of strained yogurt which is quite thick,
okay,
and I put that on crisp bread or oatmeal bread. I put olives, cut olives up. I put olive oil over it, and I sprinkle. There's a spice mixture which is very popular in the Middle East and Israel and places like that called za'atar, Zaatar,
Oh,
and
yes,
it's a mixture. Do you come across it?
I
And you
have.
you sprinkle that, yeah. And I have that. That's my lunch. If my wife's feeling really kind, she might give me some cucumber, but she doesn't like cucumber. But I tell you, olives, olive oil, za'atar, the strained yogurt is so healthy. And I eat that and I feel great. And I tell you what, I don't then get that hit in the mid afternoon where you want to
Mhm.
go and sleep, right? And as a busy surgeon in my time, the last thing you needed was to get
Yeah.
something that was going to knock you out in the afternoon. And it's incredibly healthy. I don't do much for breakfast. My breakfast is the farmed. mixture of
Right.
fruits and things and what have you, that and walnuts, and it's a small amount, and I have that with a cup of coffee, and that's it. Again, the food that doesn't agree with me tends to be very fatty food late at night. And then I get terrible heartburn and reflux and stuff like that. So you want food that is like, so I like fish, I like, but I'm easy on meat, and meat and things late at night doesn't always agree with me.
So, if you weren't a doctor, what career do you think you might have chosen?
Do you know, I loved so many different things. I could have done almost anything. I loved music. And I used to play classical music and special, instruments then. I'm no good at art, but I would have probably done oceanography. I would have gone into, I think, oceanography. I had a thing once that I thought, I tell you why, because there was a man called Jacques Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau,
Okay.
all those wonderful programs that he did. I mean, apparently he wasn't a very nice man, but who knows? But he was wonderful broadcaster, and he
Mhm.
was, it was great fun. The ocean was a terrific, and still is, by the way, fascinating place. We still haven't explored, you know,
Oh,
it
man.
by any means, but I'd love that. Yeah. Trouble
Yeah.
is, I'm not good at swimming. I'm not a good swimmer. I was a fencer, not a swimmer. I fought with swords. I was quite a good sportsman in my time, but I can't swim to save my life. I sink like a stone. Besides, the sea's full of things that want to eat you. Why would you go swimming in the sea? I mean, they're just you're just food, right?
Exactly. This has just been so enjoyable. I've learned so much. I hope my audience has too. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to add at this point?
No, I think it's very important in life that you fight your corner and you try and be happy, and that you work out who loves you. As I told you, I've been very fortunate. I'm terrified of midwives. I think I told you when I was a student, they were really scary. Those girls. But the only ones who were scarier were the girls who controlled the operating theaters, and the big sister. I ended up having to marry her to get her out of my operating theater. We're still married 46 years later, and I don't know what I'd do without her. So I think that you've got to try and be happy. It's the pursuit of happiness in a sensible way, and sharing it with people. And I think if you don't look after yourself, nobody else will. Just make a little bit of an effort in the lottery of life. As I say, look after your diet, look after your sleep, try and de-stress. Not always easy,
Right.
living away out of in an urban area in the big cities today is incredibly stressful. We've demonstrated that. We've done experiments to show that, and that having a pet makes a huge difference to the quality of your life, because you get exposure to the bugs and what have you. So get a dog, get a cat, get dirty small children. Try and live in a more rural environment, walking in the woods and stuff, and compensate in any way you can. So farm your microbiome. Immy compensates for a big chunk of that old friends hypothesis. The Mycolysibacterium is really something it's worth trying, because there's a lot of proper science behind it, not the BS. I think is a term that is used. I think there's a lot of rubbish out there, and I don't like it because people are being taken for a ride.
Mhm.
And it needs to be affordable by most people, but it needs to be good. So
Agreed.
those are the messages. Enjoy your life. It's important. You've only got the one chance. One chance. That's it.
This is so true. Where can our listeners find you and then learn more about Emmy?
If you go to www.immy.co, you'll find lots of podcasts and things that cover a lot of topics. So have a look at that and look at it carefully. There are links to YouTube, and we're there on YouTube. I'm there on YouTube. You'll find other things about me on YouTube from my previous life, as it were. We are on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, all that sort of thing. I don't do Instagram personally, because I've no idea how it works. I mean, my grandchildren do it, right? So I'm too old, really. But Immy.co will you'll have a great start on that, and you'll find your way through.
Wonderful. And I do know that they are going to give us a code for the listeners. I don't know what
Yes.
kind of discount there will be, but if any time that you purchase from these, it does help support the show, and they usually give you a really nice discount. As we wrap up, my lovelies, if your immune system feels a little smarter after this episode, you're welcome. If today's chat with Dr. Ackle gave you some new information against inflammation, gut chaos, or menopausal mayhem, don't keep it to yourself. Please share this episode with a friend, your sister, or that one friend who owns more supplements than shoes. Guilty as charged. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra fabulous, please leave us a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find the show. Until next time, keep your gut happy, your immune system sassy, and your hormones somewhat cooperative. Be well.
Thank you for joining me here today on the Menopause Midwife. If you'd like more information or to work with me, feel free to check out my website and book a wellness consultation at ohm406.com. Be well.